The meeting of the Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Bosley.
Present.
Alderman French.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Carter. Alderman Coulter.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Green.
Present.
Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
7 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We have 2 agenda items today. One is getting an update on the crime reduction program, and the other is to talk about the process related to the Prop S. We do have here today Mr. Filler, if he would come forward and give us an update on the comprehensive crime reduction program.
Thank you, Chairman, and I apologize. I'm a little sick, so my voice may sound a little strange. Thanks again for allowing me to come today to update you on the city's crime prevention plan, the peer plan. I am passing out, or someone else is passing out for me kindly, a spreadsheet that Alderman French and we developed, I guess, about a year ago to help track the progress. I think I may have shared this with you in the past, but apologies if not, and I've updated it here. It's also on a Google Drive, so if that's of interest, I'm happy to share that with anyone. I believe the Alderman has access, but I'm not sure if everyone else does, so apologies for that. But if you'd like access, just let me know. So these are some of the key items that we discussed in the development of the peer plan. I'll go through them briefly, but happy to update you in more detail on any of these or any other items. The peer plan has more than just this, but these are some of the big items that you all, I think, have been particularly interested in, and apologies for the small font. First, for the neighborhood ownership model, we have 3 active neighborhood ownership models in the 15 neighborhoods. We were hoping to have more than that. But we are not there yet. The police department and the liaison officers are to take the lead on that. So I just kind of want to bring that up. The second piece is liaison officers. I've asked the chief for an updated list of this. This is the most recent list I have, so it may not be accurate, so apologies for that. I'm still waiting to hear back from him. We held 4 coordinated cleanup efforts throughout the city over the summer. They happened, I think, in May, June, July, and I think there was actually 2 in June in 4 of the neighborhoods. We also expanded our funding for grass cutting. We put out an RFP this summer and encouraged folks to apply for that, to allow neighborhood-based groups to apply. So we had a couple organizations apply, and I believe they were selected. I think they have started by now. I know they are community-based groups. They hire individuals from the community to cut grass. So we're excited to see how that plays out. Otis from our SLDC is leading up the economic development planning piece of this. So he is developing a list and items that he can offer to each ward and each neighborhood if they have assistance or needs around economic development. I know it can be challenging sometimes navigating those processes, and we'll make sure that's as easy as possible. And so I think to Alderman French point, the alphabet soup, we want to make sure that's accessible to all neighborhoods. For youth programming, I know we've worked a little bit with members of this committee on updating the Prop S RFP. We've also expanded hours at the recreation centers, and we are shortly putting out an RFP to provide training to the recreation center staff members. So we hope to improve both the quality and the quantity of our recreation offerings. We have expanded the number of authorized park rangers to 31. This is 3 new rangers. We also have 2 new supervisors. We are still hiring for these positions, so I would encourage, if you know anyone who's interested in being a park ranger, we've not been able to fill those positions yet. Finally, for the Slate offices, we have 3 out of the 5 complete. We have 1 in Cherokee Street, we have 1 in Prince Hall, and then we have another. It's not in the PR 15 neighborhoods, but it's in the Peabody. There's another facility there, but we're hoping to get the last 2 in some of the 15 neighborhoods.
It's in the Peabody.
Yeah, they have an office in the Peabody. I think it's a community center, maybe. I've not been there yet. I know one of the important things was to update you all regularly. I know it's been the summer, so we obviously haven't updated then, but I am here as often as you'd like to update. If there's any questions I can't answer today, I'm happy to come back and answer them another time. Regarding surveillance cameras, there are 39 connected to the fiber in the Pier neighborhoods on the north side, and there are 21 on the south side in the Pier neighborhoods. We have more cameras than that. Those are the ones just in the 15 neighborhoods. So we have 60 surveillance cameras connected to the optic fiber network, and I know that's something we're expanding on. Hopefully, all the aldermen have had a chance to talk to the chief about that. If not, we're happy to connect you to him. I know that's been something my understanding is most aldermen have had the chance to chat with him about cameras, but if that's not the case, please let me know and we can facilitate that. Additional homicide detectives, I have not heard back from the chief on that. So I know that was one of the items, and I'm hoping that he'll have an answer for us shortly on that. Funding for our police officers, we're working, and I know many of the aldermen have talked to JP and others and Todd about the 911 quarter-cent sales tax. But we have a one-pager, and I'm happy to talk with you anytime about that and can give you more details on that. I know the Civilian Oversight Board is up and running. They have been accepting complaints. We have also, as you know, developed that crime app, which allows sort of crime data to be more accessible and transparent to residents. Finally, in the last two columns are just homicides in 2015 and 2016. So this is year to date, so through August, the end of August 2015 compared to the end of August 2016. These numbers have gone up since August. We are running, I think, last time I looked, about 2 behind last year, so roughly citywide about the same. But you can see from the 15 neighborhoods, while overall crime may not have gone down across the entire city, and homicides may be about the same. In the 15 neighborhoods, homicides are slightly down and are a slightly smaller percentage of the citywide totals. Again, this is just through August, and so, you know, there has been a month since then of updated information and crime, but that's where we stand today. So I saw some looks when I was saying some of these numbers. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Bozzi, no questions. Alderman French.
Thanks for the update. So when we worked together along with the Chief of Staff, Mary Ellen Ponder, to kind of put together this plan, you know, it was key that that we target efforts in these areas that have represented the highest percentage of violence in the city, these 15 neighborhoods, but also that you know, that we have a level of accountability to make sure that what we agree to do actually gets done. And so that's really why we ask you to come in on these regular basis, and why put together this kind of score chart here to be able to measure the success. Implementation of the plan does not look so good, according to our score chart here. Let's start with column 1, the neighborhood ownership model, which we know when it is implemented and it is maintained, and you have people who are committed, and if the city commits 1 or 2 people to kind of help guide it, these things are effective. As it is right now, though, you say we only have 3 active ones out of the 15 neighborhoods. The only 3 active ones are in Bevo Mill, Dutchtown, and Gravel Park. Now remind me, Dutchtown too, are they still operating under that JAG grant, so they actually have some additional resources?
So that grant is over, and this information was provided by the chief's office. So if this is, I'm not sure when they last updated this, but that's the information I have.
So this may not even be up to date. Okay. So there was some discussion about who would take the lead with these NOMs, whether the circuit attorney's office or the police department. Ultimately, what we decided it would be SLPD. Now, my neighborhood officer, though, that we finally have a neighborhood officer back, he really has not talked too much about the NOM or gotten much direction about implementing the NOM. So do you know if even though we discussed and even though it's on this sheet here, does the police department know that they're supposed to be taking the lead with helping to set up these NOMs?
Yes, I have asked them to do that. I have not received an answer, so it may be worthwhile to have the chief come answer some of those questions.
Okay, so that's something to ask the chief. And then this actually is a good segue to the next column, the liaison officers. Now, this is not an up-to-date list, is that correct?
This is the most recent list I have, but based on your comments, I suggest it's not the most.
Yeah, it's not up-to-date. So, so Eric Armstead, for instance, that you have listed at Baton and Mark Twain, is actually down here in Penrose and O'Fallon now. And from what I understand, Baton, which again, as you remember, is one of the largest neighborhoods, has no neighborhood liaison officer right now. I believe the officer who was assigned to be their neighborhood officer got promoted or transferred or something, and so now they are without a liaison officer again. So do you know if what the plan is to fill that position? I've heard that because the department is shorthanded, they are not planning to fill that position.
They're not planning on filling the liaison officer position?
Yeah.
So that should not be what they're doing, so I'll have to talk to the chief, but I would also recommend that you all speak with him about that, because that's one of the key pillars of supporting this plan as liaison officers.
I agree. So let's see if we can get an updated list of liaison officers and see if there are any other vacancies besides the Baden one that I know of. Coordinated cleanup efforts. So an RFP was put out for private, either companies or organizations or nonprofits, to help with this load of vacant properties and grass to cut. Do you know how many companies have been hired?
So I think we had, I want to say there was 4 applications, and I don't know, our forestry commissioner is I don't know if you know, is resigning, and so I haven't heard from him a final answer. I think they hired 2, but don't quote me on that, even though I'm being recorded. So I'll need to check on that, but my understanding was that 4 applied, we hired 1 or 2, and they should have started over the summer, so I can get an update on how that's been going. We did not have as much interest as I think we had hoped. We really envisioned a lot more applications, and only 4 was a little, I think, disappointing to us.
Okay, and do we know what neighborhoods those 4, or whatever the number is, have been assigned to?
They were supposed to be in the 15 neighborhoods. I don't know off the top of my head, though, no, but I can check on that.
Okay, so that's what these little fields are for here, so maybe we can fill those in with who is now responsible for making sure the vacant lots in the Greater Ville are cut, or they're in Walnut Park West are cut. I mean, that's what we want there. And Todd Walterman, Director of Operations, is the point person on this effort?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he would have that information? All right, so you can get that and fill that in for us. Economic Development Planning. I still have not heard a word from SLDC. As far as I know, SLDC still has no plan, no thoughts, no intentions on helping guide economic development in any of these neighborhoods. That's been frustrating for years, and I was hoping this would be an effort to kind of jumpstart that so that they would take economic development in some of these neighborhoods seriously. Still haven't heard from them, and we're about, how many months? 9 months into this? 10 months into this plan?
You want to bring him in also?
Let's bring Otis in. Youth programming. So right now, we have expanded hours at all centers. Now that goes to what time now?
I think it's 9 p.m., but I think it depends on the season and the day. So I think obviously like Sunday nights, I don't think it goes as late as some of the other days. They should be expanded hours, should be listed on the website, but if they're not, I'll make sure that they update those.
Now with those expanded hours, are there any expanded programming?
I think it would be the same programming, space for kids to engage in recreation, study. Not necessarily it's always supported programming. It may just be the space and adults to monitor.
Okay.
And I think that's where some of the training hopefully will come into play, is that we can train the existing staff on how to better interact and support the young people that are using the recreation centers.
Okay. And additional programming we hope to come from the Prop S funding, which we'll discuss a little later. All right, park rangers, you say 3 new rangers have been hired, including...
But we've authorized the hiring of 3 new rangers and 2 new supervisors. We have not filled those positions yet and are still waiting. And I think we're still taking applicants. So again, if you know anyone in your neighborhoods are interested.
Okay, so these positions aren't filled yet?
No.
Okay, so we've authorized and funded 3 new rangers and 2 supervisors. So these parks, specifically the large parks, still don't have dedicated park rangers?
It's the same as it was last year until we have the new rangers.
All right. As far as the slate offices for job placement, are you guys measuring the traffic or any kind of stats or results? How many people are coming into these offices? How many people are getting applications being put into the system, et cetera?
Yeah, Slate does count the number of people who come to their programmings and events. For most of the Slate federally funded programming, they do still need to come down to 15, 20 eventually. There's a specific test they have to take and other things. So ultimately, they have, for specific events and programs, they measure that in the satellite offices. But the full scope of it probably trickles down to 15, 20 as well.
Okay. So the one that I'm familiar with here is the Slate office in Prince Hall. I haven't seen the Cherokee one. Maybe the Alderwoman can speak to that. But the Prince Hall facility is not very accessible. As you know, Prince Hall is a large building.
Yeah, I've
set
been
back
there.
in the
Yeah.
street. You have to go in and check in at the desk, and it's not very clear what's in there. So I'd be interested in seeing the stats that they have as far as traffic and how successful that is. You know, my vision for these things were more like storefront offices, which is probably how it is. How is it on?
I would say it's not as accessible as it could be. Very similar. It's not like it's very well visualized.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would be more effective if they were more like storefront offices where people can like see and you know what's there.
And I think,
But let's take a look at the stats.
yeah, and I think one of the things I have asked folks is if in any of the wards there are storefronts that we can use. You know, obviously, we probably couldn't afford to pay rent unless we had some more funding, but we are very open to expanding to other locations, assuming that there is both internet connection and a space for us to use that's safe. So again, we're happy to do that. I think there's a funding challenge about rent for properties.
Okay. Skipping here, surveillance cameras. You mentioned a number there. What was the number of cameras you said were connected?
Overall was 60 in the 15 neighborhoods.
60?
60, 60, yes.
0. And how many you said were north?
39.
Are you including the 21st Ward cameras in that figure?
If they are connected to the optic fiber network, then yes. If they're not, then no.
Okay, not connected to the fiber.
Yeah,
network.
I don't remember seeing them on the map, so I don't think they were on there.
Okay, so I know that there's been talk about coming up with kind of a plan about how to get more cameras along the fiber optic network. Is there a final plan for that, or is it?
Yeah, I know BPS and the police department are working on that. I'll be honest, I've been a little bit disengaged from that. It's a little more technical than I really have the knowledge for. My understanding is that why the fiber optic does run underneath the streets, there aren't the connectivity to servers or, again, this is an area I'm not very experienced in, so it might be helpful to have a question to talk to Todd about this as well. But my understanding is that there is a plan being worked on, but it is more challenging. And I know it's also very expensive to build these server boxes to connect, I guess, the optic cables to, which then you can plug things into. Again, outside my expertise, but it is something that BPS and the police department are working on.
Okay. All right, so we'll have to do some follow-up on that. And then I think this is lastly, the number of homicide detectives. So do you have any more data on that?
Again, I've asked the chief, but I've gotten no answer.
When did you last ask the chief?
I last asked him yesterday.
Okay. And still no answer. Okay. All right, so yeah, we should probably get that filled in too, because as you know, the number of homicides that we've had in the city in the last few years versus the number of detectives that we have, it just presents a very big load.
There is good research out there on the number of homicide detectives, and it looks like for each detective should only be the lead on 3 cases. So if you take the number of homicides we have a year, divide by 3, that would be my educated guess on how many homicide detectives we should have, which is, as the last update I received, was not the number we have.
Yeah, if I remember, the load was something like, I don't know, I think it was like 20 homicides.
Yeah, we have 20-some homicide detectives, and I believe we did add a few early in the year, but again, I haven't received confirmation on that, so I'm hesitant to say that, but we should have, again, depending on how many homicides we have per year, about 3-to-1 ratio. Again, you can work on multiple cases as a secondary, but as a lead detective, you should only have about 3 cases to work them well.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman Coulter?
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Carl, for being here. I want to just first say that this looks strikingly similar to the last time we saw it, which was several months ago. So it's disappointing to me because at that time I pointed out that we don't have an active NOM in the Dutchtown neighborhood, that the NOM in the Gravois Park neighborhood is not really received any liaison officer support. Keith Navarra, who's mentioned here as a liaison officer for the Dutchtown neighborhood, is actually a first district police officer. He doesn't work in the 3rd district, which is the 20th ward portion of the Dutchtown neighborhood, a very significant part of the Dutchtown neighborhood, and arguably the part with the highest crime. So these issues were pointed out last time we took a look at this. The neighborhood ownership model is not functioning to any significant degree on the south side. I want to point out here that I would hope that as part of reviewing the peer plan, that we would be taking a look at real hard data, something that's missing here. If I take a look at what the St. Louis Police Department has published for crime comparison, the last published data, which was through August of this year, I can take a look at Gravois Park, for example, and see that we have an increase of homicides almost infinite because we went from 0 to 4. Robberies in Gravois Park are up 44%. Aggravated assaults are up 30%. And overall person crimes in that neighborhood are up 38%. Dutchtown, we have an increase of homicide of 20% and robberies are up 22%. We have very, very significant increases in crime in these neighborhoods. If I look across the board in St. Louis, we're doing pretty good on crime. We haven't really seen these major increases in aggravated assaults, robberies, and homicides. That's a good thing. But what I am seeing is in the 2 South Side Pier neighborhoods, we're seeing a very, very significant uptick in crime. We mentioned cameras on the south side in the neighborhoods. We only have 2 neighborhoods on the south side that are part of the Pier network, Gravois Park, 3, and Bevo. So I don't know where Bevo is on this, but I can tell you that there isn't a single camera on the fiber plan that I'm aware of in the 20th ward, which makes up a good percentage of what we're looking at on the south side. So if I could find out where these 21 south side cameras are, I think it would be very helpful. For me, it's been very confusing and cumbersome, and there's been a huge roadblock to conversations about cameras and how to get them. I have not found that process to be something that is navigable. And I think that is a very big roadblock to getting cameras. I want them in my parks, I want them in the commercial corridors, and I've just found the process to be a mess. And I'm being very blunt. We talked about you've probably seen Gravois Park in the news lately with some very, very horrendous incidents of assault. We have I would hope that we could have some kind of comprehensive plan. A lot of the issues are perpetuated by juveniles. We seem to have an issue where just the other day we had some juveniles who committed major larceny, were arrested. The police department did a phenomenal job triangulating with all kinds of folks, and they were released a day later. We have to figure out some way of addressing very significant increase in juvenile crime in our city, especially in these neighborhoods. The rec centers with programming, I can appreciate that we have an increase, but there is absolutely no information about the programs that are out there. I stopped by Cherokee Rec over the weekend. They have a very significant increase in programming. They didn't even have a flyer. They didn't even have a single listing of the programs they have available. They started offering free pool access on the weekends. Not a single person was in there because not a single person knew about it. And we have this huge resource, an indoor beautiful pool. We have it staffed and not a single bit of outreach to let the community know this exists. As a side note, I posted it on Facebook. It went wild. I had 100 shares on it because people want to know about these things, but there's absolutely no communication that it's going on. I appreciate that you're here today. I have to be honest and feel like this is not an update. I don't feel updated on where we are. There's not a real comprehensive way to look at things. Again, I agree with the alderman from the 21st. I haven't had any communication about what SLDC might be doing. And, you know, I just, looking at the sheer numbers, the sheer volume of increase, and that's just in August, and we know that in our neighborhoods on the south side, we have seen a very significant and alarming increase in crime in Gravois Park specifically over the last month. And so these numbers of this increase are alarming, and one that I think really warrants some better communication with the neighborhoods, hopefully some coordination with juvenile justice, you know, leadership in the neighborhoods, myself, and other folks.
No, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. And there are items here that are outstanding that I will make sure we get to you. I will say the juvenile court, and they do an excellent job. They're not under our control, but they are good partners. Our juvenile division is excellent, and they have done quite a few new programs recently to expand their reach into the schools. I think for the summers that was a challenge because, again, school's not in session. And so now that school has started back up, we hope to find some of these programs to be a little bit more effective. So I hope to see a decrease in some of the juvenile activity you're discussing. Again, it's going to be challenging for the compounded problems, poverty, education, everything else that we're you know, facing. But I'm hopeful that we might see some increase once the school year has started.
I mean, I'll just say an increase of almost 40% in person crimes in Gravois Park, the single most densely populated neighborhood in our city, one of the Pier 15, almost 40% increase in human crimes is nothing short of alarming. And especially when we're not seeing crime across the board just jump. This is a specific problem to some specific neighborhoods, and I fail to see where we're, you know, having a targeted approach to them.
Does that complete you?
Thank you.
After Alderwoman Green, maybe we can have a quick conversation about what else we feel should be in the report or how it should be shaped to give us the type of information that would be helpful to the committee. So, Alderwoman Green?
This might be better for what you were going to say next, because I ask you the same question every time about, I mean, you know what I'm going to ask you, about substance abuse, about the heroin issue, and like we need some kind of update or metrics on like what we're doing to deal with that issue, because that is driving so much of the crime in our neighborhoods. So I can put that on to Alderman Kennedy, what you were going into next.
I was going to do it after you were finished. You're done?
I'm done.
Oh, okay.
That's my soapbox.
All right, then. Then what else would be helpful in this report that would, one, give us the information that we're looking for, and give us the review that we feel we need as a committee? Alderman?
So one, I think having the data actually filled in helps. I mean, having a field or a column with no info is not very helpful, and you can see all the blank spots. So I mean, having the information in there is critical. Otherwise, it's pointless. We're looking at a report card with no grades. So, the other thing I think is, you know, it seems that you know, Carl is put into a difficult situation here because a lot of the data that is needed to fill these columns here is not being provided. At least two of these columns, the information is supposed to come from the chief or the police department, and we're not getting that. Actually, 3 columns here. And then SLDC also has a responsibility. Slate has a responsibility. And so, I mean, if they are not doing a good job of providing Carl the information for him to then report it to us, maybe we need to call them in directly.
Right. That's what I would say. So it's not necessarily anything structural in the report, but one filling in the information and then getting the information that needs to fill in these portions.
Yeah, I mean, most of the critical columns aren't filled in.
Right.
So I don't know how to
Right.
assess it,
Right.
except to say that nothing's being done in those categories.
Alderman Spencer, did you have anything?
I would agree. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with that. I think, looking at crime metrics would be really helpful. Again, it's something that our neighborhoods look at regularly, those crime stats. Where are we at with homicides? Where are we at with robberies, burglaries, aggravated assaults? I think when we're looking at crime, I hate to say this, and I'm not discounting stolen vehicles are a very big issue, but when we see person crimes, violent crimes perpetuated regularly, an increase in those is extremely alarming. And so I would like to add those metrics, how are these neighborhoods doing compared to the rest of the city? I think that's a very important comparison. And it's just critically important to have what data we do have on here updated. I think the neighborhood ownership model is a great idea and a great concept, and we have it as a top priority, and yet I don't see us having taken a single action to make that function, at least where I'm sitting.
Alderwoman Green, did you have anything? That is something else you'd like to see in the report, or?
Really just some kind of metric. I know we had meetings a number of months ago kind of to talk about building capacity of access to substance abuse services, inpatient treatment. I haven't heard anything in a number of months on that, and I kind of dropped the ball on following up with you, but
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and I'll definitely include metrics moving forward. I think the one piece is that, thanks to Alderman Spencer and others, we do have that prescription drug monitoring program now that you all helped get through. And I think we are working with a researcher, and I forget her name, but she's working with WashU and United Way with the Gun Violence Prevention Initiative to catalog all the resources, social service resources in the spectrum. They're looking specifically at reentry, but one of the buckets is substance abuse. And our hope is that that will be an expansive bucket that will include not just reentry services, but substance abuse services writ large. And so we just had our social service providers all gather last Monday, I believe, at WashU to begin that process. So I think part of the challenge is that there hasn't really been anyone to step in to say what's out there, what's the need, and then try to match those two. We have some numbers from the state because the state and the Department of Mental Health is really the ones that fund that work for us. I mean, we do a little, but really we don't have any providers. So 99% of it, I would say, is funded by the state and some federal pass-through. So this is the first time we've ever had a chance to take a step back and look at what's out there, what is the need, and see how we can plug some of those gaps. So I think that's an excellent question. I think we, quite frankly, don't have the full answer to that right now. I think we're beginning to get that. So I will definitely put whatever I can in here. I may be a little weak to start, but as we get that information, I'll be able to expand it.
do we have a time frame that we think, we'll be able to figure out exactly, what our capacity looks like, and then, I guess, a plan going forward for, as probably most of us are hypothesizing that there is a significant gap between the services that are available and the actual need of people with addiction. So,
Yeah, I think this fall, I think by the end of the year, my understanding is they're going to have a lot of the primary data collection done for the service provider end of things. I think from the need end of things, it's a little challenging because a lot of folks just don't touch any systems. They are, they have their substance abuse issues and they don't necessarily connect with anyone. We obviously do collect death data. We collect national surveillance data from the state that the CDC funds. Unfortunately, SLPS does not participate in Youth Risk Behavioral, YBRSS, which I don't remember what that stands for, Youth Risk Behavioral Surveillance Survey, which collects data on substance abuse use by children. They don't collect that data right now. If they were to change that, I think that would be fantastic because then we'd understand some of that pipeline piece. Right now, for whatever reason, that's not being collected, but we will have information from inpatient, mental health court, and arrest and death data. So that's the best we have right now. I'm open to suggestions, or if you have other thoughts on that, we'd always love to expand our data collection and understanding the scope of the need.
Alderwoman Spencer, you have one other item.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If possible, some of the things that are not being activated right now, the neighborhood ownership models, I think having a timeline or having some kind of time goals for these would be helpful so we can see, okay, Baden, we don't have a neighborhood ownership model, but we have a goal of getting one in place by February of 2017. I think something else that would be helpful is, what does this look like? A report card. We have listed, it's easy to check off the box, yep, Dutchtown's got a neighborhood ownership model, but we now, if I wasn't here, we might not know that that's not really the case. So having some kind of, actual report card, it could be as simple as, here's the point person, here how many citizens are involved, this is a general synopsis of what the actions of this neighborhood ownership model has taken in the last year. It could be very simple to kind of overview that, but I think it would be helpful, especially because I know we have assigned liaison officers to some of these neighborhoods, but there is not really a concept. The officers themselves, in my experience, not all of them have an idea of what their role even should look like. And so kind of articulating what it does look like, maybe providing some kind of generalized what a liaison officer is for and what they're supposed to be doing would be helpful. What the goals of having a cleanup effort are, some kind of circling back. We did several in our neighborhoods. I have to say, I don't think they were very successful. But having that reflection is key to making some of these efforts in the future successful.
We can work on that.
You said, I didn't.
Oh, we can work on that.
Okay.
I do appreciate that you're in a very, very difficult position. I kind of railed on you, and I know that you're here to be as helpful as you can. Without resources, you can only bring so much. But obviously, some of us are very frustrated with where we are in our neighborhoods. So appreciate you being here today, Carl.
No, of course, and I understand completely.
Then we will also set up time to bring in these others in. Do you have, if you could get this to me electronically? All right. Are there any other questions? All right, we'll try to also summarize some of the things to be added in and get it to you in writing.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Our other agenda item is the, let me pass that down, the process, and I tried to do a quick review. I tried to do a quick written review of the process, at least what has been in the past, and it's about 8 steps that I've identified. The first thing is that a RFP is composed between this committee and the Public Safety Office. Once that has been composed, then the Public Safety Committee in Step 2 approves and releases that RFP. If you remember in our last meeting, we approved the RFP and it has been released. Applicants have the opportunity to apply up until, or to get their proposals in by October 31st. The third stage or step that I have identified is that the proposals that come in are sent out to all of the committee members here, the board, the Public Safety Department, because the applications are actually brought into the Board of Aldermen. They're given to the Public Safety Department. Each member of this committee gets one, and then any reviews that the Public Safety Department has created on past performances of programs also are distributed. The next step is the creation of a subcommittee of members of this committee, of the Public Safety Committee, and on occasion there may be others who attend that meeting. Example, representation from the President's Office. One year we had some representation from the Recreation Department to come and to sit in those meetings and give their thoughts and ideas. Also, the applications are given to, or the proposals are given to United Way for their review and rating, and then they send that information back to the committee, which is also reviewed by the subcommittee, and that information is distributed to the entire Public Safety Committee. The fifth step is that subcommittee reviews all that information in relationship to the RFP and makes a recommendation as to what programs they feel should be funded and at what levels. That information, that recommendation is given to the Public Safety Committee, who ultimately makes the final determination as to what programs are funded and at what levels. Then that information is given to the Public Safety Department, who informs the awardees that they have been selected and at what amounts they were getting. Then the Public Safety Department in step 8 actually administers the program and ensures that they meet the guidelines of the RFP and of what their proposals are saying. So those are the basic 8 steps. And I wanted to, and we've really never had it in writing before we've done this. These dollars, came as an effort of all the people to try to do some things on the front end to reduce crime as opposed to just doing things on the back end. So the question is now, are there any other things you feel should be in the process, or do you have any other thoughts in relationship to the selection process? In one of our meetings, some of our members talked about bringing in some of the applicants once they have submitted their proposals to have discussions with them about what they're proposing to do and to get a better feel for their programming. Is that something the committee feels it wants to do, or are there anything else other than what's written here? So we can open that up to any discussion. Okay, then. We'll go along and see. Okay. This evolved over time. When we first started out, we didn't have all these steps, but it evolved over time.
To see it in writing.
Yeah, and it's the first time we really put it in writing. So. Okay, if there's nothing else then, and I'm sure as we go along, we may identify some other things that may need to be done. If so, we'll just add that in as we go.
So the RFP is out on the street now,
The RFP is out,
and proposals are due the 31st?
31st. Okay. All right, well, if there's nothing else, then we will probably have a meeting next week. We do have some board bills to review and a resolution, but I'll look and see and let us know. If nothing else, then our meeting is adjourned.